When will the dumbest criminals ever learn? The answer is never. Let's find out who the dumbest criminals are, starting with number 7, CEO of Real Bosses Don't Do This. Jasmine Clifton from Charlotte, North Carolina, is definitely in hot water with the feds. They hit her with federal charges for pulling off a scam to steal nearly $150,000 in COVID-19 relief funds from the U.S. Small Business Administration. She thought she could fool them by submitting false information for an economic injury disaster loan for her online clothing business, Jazzy Jazz LLC. But her scheme didn't fly, and now she's grounded. Clifton got crafty and submitted forged documents to beef up her loan application. She cooked up a fake tax document and cooked the books by inflating her revenues. Talk about playing with fire. She had the audacity to claim that her business, Jazzy Jazz LLC, was a victim of the pandemic, even though she had shut it down months earlier. Clifton managed to score a cool $149,900 in disaster relief funds. The whole point of those funds was to help struggling businesses hit hard by the pandemic. But did she use the money to get back on her feet? No way. Instead, she went on a wild shopping spree, hitting up fancy stores like Neiman Marcus, Nordstrom, and Louis Vuitton, and even splurging at diamond stores. What's truly mind-boggling is how Clifton tried to portray herself as a hard-working CEO and a self-made entrepreneur. She took to social media bragging about building her business from scratch. She even had the nerve to brush off people asking for loans or favors, acting like she was all about that independent boss life. Clifton's actions finally caught up with her when a federal grand jury indicted her on charges of wire fraud and fraud related to major disasters or emergencies. Number 6, 10 weddings and a prison sentence. Liana Barrientos, a New York woman with a penchant for serial marriages, went on a decade-long spree of tying the knot with multiple men simultaneously. This bride, a 38-year-old blonde, astonishingly managed to get married a staggering 10 times since 1999. In 2002 alone, she exchanged vows and said "I do" 5 times. The lingering question, however, is why she never bothered to get divorced from any of her husbands. Authorities soon discovered that Barrientos wasn't seeking love, but was actually involved in a marriage-for-hire immigration scheme. In 2006, authorities even deported one of her husbands due to his concerning statements against the United States. This incident raised alarming concerns about potential security breaches and the ease with which the system could be manipulated. Barrientos managed to dodge detection for years by altering the spelling of her name on marriage licenses and filing marriage documents in various locations throughout New York State. She deliberately sought out men from countries that were deemed red flags for immigration, including Egypt, Bangladesh, Turkey, Czechoslovakia, Pakistan, Mali, and Georgia. At times, she was astonishingly married to a total of 8 men simultaneously. In a weird attempt to cover her tracks, Barrientos boldly claimed on her 2010 marriage documents that she had never been married before. She even insisted to investigators that her marriage to a man named Sal Keita was her first and only marriage. However, further investigations revealed the truth behind her web of lies. Barrientos, who has children from different fathers, faced charges related to falsifying official records. She pleaded not guilty to 2 felony counts of filing a false instrument. If convicted, she could be sentenced to a maximum of 8 years in prison. The involvement of the Department of Homeland Security in this case obviously shows the seriousness of the investigation. The fact that she was married to a man who was deported due to threatening statements raises valid concerns about potential national security risks associated with her actions. You'd think that being married that many times would be punishment enough for everyone. Number 5, no smokes left behind. Robert Tutaki Kemp from Bell Block in New Zealand found himself on the wrong side of the law. He became embroiled in a burglary that resulted in the theft of over $5,000 worth of stolen property. Kemp's criminal actions unfolded in September 2017 when he targeted a residence in his hometown. With a determination to gather as much loot as possible, Kemp forcibly entered the house by smashing through a window. Once inside, he ransacked each room, sifting through through drawers and cupboards and scattering items in his search for valuables. However, fate had a twist in store for Kemp. He left an unsmoked roll-your-own cigarette at the crime scene, and little did he know that this seemingly insignificant item would become the key to solving the crime. Forensic analysis of the cigarette revealed Kemp's DNA, leading to his arrest. This burglary wasn't an isolated incident in the area. Other homes had fallen victim to similar break-ins around the same time, prompting the police to issue a warning to the community. Authorities suspected that Kemp's criminal activities extended beyond the single offense for which he was charged. The style employed by Kemp aligned with the patterns in other burglaries. In particular, the burglar had a habit of searching bedroom drawers and targeting valuable jewelry. The accumulating evidence strengthened the suspicion that Kemp was involved in multiple thefts. During his trial, Judge Chris Sygrove acknowledged Kemp as a repeat offender with a lengthy record of criminal charges. In light of the evidence and the nature of the crimes, Kemp was sentenced to 2 years in jail, subsequently converted to 12 months of home detention. As part of his punishment, Kemp spent some of his detention in a rehabilitation facility in Auckland. Additionally, he was ordered to pay $200 in reparation to the victims to cover the insurance. Do you think this is enough to get him to quit smoking? Number 4. Gambling with time. Hype Kong Van and Thai Min Fan orchestrated a scam that tricked an Oregon retiree known as RW into loaning them over $3 million. The unsuspecting retiree believed he was making investments in a landscaping business based in Colorado and covering legal expenses. Except by landscaping business, Hype and Thai meant funding our extravagant lifestyle. For several years, the deceitful couple indulged in a life of luxury in Las Vegas, frequenting renowned casinos like the Bellagio, Caesar's Palace, and MGM Grand. They went on a gambling spree that saw them squander approximately $2.5 million of the ill-gotten money they had obtained. Van, posing as a struggling Colorado businessman, painted a desperate picture of a business on the verge of collapse. He even went as far as saying he was thinking of ending it all, leaving the retiree with little choice but to extend a helping hand. But their deceptive endeavors were eventually exposed when the IRS caught wind of the scheme. The couple's extravagant lifestyle in a Las Vegas suburb came to an abrupt halt as they were arrested and transported to Oregon to face charges in a Portland courtroom. Interestingly, even after their initial arrest, Van couldn't resist the allure of gambling. While awaiting trial, he returned to the world of casinos, displaying a complete lack of remorse and a failure to learn from his mistakes. During their court proceedings, Van pleaded not guilty to charges of conspiracy to commit mail and wire fraud, but he was ultimately sentenced to 37 months in federal prison. Van also faced the consequences and received a sentence of 21 months. Sounds like Van is all practiced up to gamble with cigarettes. Number 3. Getting paid to no-show. In a shocking display of incompetence, a group of 8 psychotherapists operating in the city managed to swindle over $600,000 from hard-working taxpayers. These so-called therapists, including a duo employed by the New York City Department of Education, were entrusted with a crucial task, providing essential therapy sessions to children in need through programs like the Early Intervention Program. However, instead of fulfilling their responsibilities, they chose to engage in a scam involving forged signatures, concocting false claims for sessions that were never conducted. The impact of their deceit was truly disheartening, as it resulted in approximately 200 vulnerable children being denied the vital treatments they deserved. This fraudulent scheme persisted for an astonishing length of time, spanning from around August 2012 to April 2018, magnifying the harm inflicted upon these innocent kids. Ironically, the downfall of these therapists stemmed from their lazy approach to covering up their crimes. Prompted by suspicious claims unearthed by the City Health Department, the police and FBI launched an investigation. Employing a variety of cross-referencing techniques, such as analyzing phone records, GPS data, and travel records, the investigators were able to quickly identify blatant inconsistencies. It became clear that the therapists were nowhere near the supposed locations where the therapy sessions were supposed to have taken place. The attempts at covering up their crimes weren't only feeble, but shockingly inept. One of the therapists, Kadara Doyle, submitted 2 invoices for simultaneous sessions with different children at separate locations. A clear impossibility. Additionally, she didn't even bother to attend either of the scheduled sessions. 2 others, Patricia Hakim and Leobov Belina, were caught red-handed, filing claims while they were out of the country on vacation. Bail amounts were set at significant sums, ranging from $100,000 to $150,000, underscoring the gravity of their offenses. This case will undoubtedly be remembered not for its intricate sophistication, intention, but for its sheer laziness. The callous disregard displayed by these people, coupled with their weak attempts to cover their tracks, only sped up their downfall. With therapists like these, the kids were probably better off anyway. Number 2. The Vegas Maid. In a mind-boggling display of stupidity, Amanda Melendez, a hotel maid in Las Vegas, found herself in hot water after allegedly stealing over $1 million worth of belongings from a guest room. The incident unfolded at the Videra Hotel, where 3 men had requested housekeeping services. Imagine the shock on their faces when they entered the room, only to find their bags turned inside out, beds half made, and cleaning supplies carelessly abandoned. But that was just the beginning of their nightmare. The real blow came when they discovered that their meticulously hidden jewelry had vanished into thin air. We're talking about 2 Rolex watches, a Cartier watch, 7 diamond Cuban link chains, bracelets, and a gold ring, all gone without a trace. Adding insult to injury, another guest reported that $300 in cash had mysteriously vanished from the same room. How could this happen? Well, it turns out that Melendez, the housekeeper assigned to the room, had a rather incriminating phone conversation with an inmate in prison. And guess what? The conversation revolved around the valuable jewelry she encountered while cleaning the room. Talk about a criminal mastermind. Authorities wasted no time in apprehending Amanda, who now faces charges of grand larceny, burglary, and conspiracy to commit burglary. It's clear that her ill-conceived plan unraveled quickly, leaving her in a heap of trouble. One can't help but wonder how someone could be so foolish as to leave behind cleaning supplies and half-made beds and talk on recorded prison phone calls. If you're enjoying how dumb these criminals are, be sure to stay right on this video for our past release about some of the dumbest bribe attempts ever. Number 1. Pawning it off. Robert James Rowe, a 39-year-old man from Queensland, Australia, installed 7 security cameras at his friend's pawn shop. 6 years later, Rowe still had the capability to remotely control the surveillance system using his phone. Exploiting this advantage, he hatched a plan to break into the shop while the owner, Wayne McKellar, and his wife were vacationing in Bali. In November 2013, Rowe deactivated the camera covering the main section of the store, allowing him to enter undetected. Using the keypad he'd installed, Rowe gained access to the shop and made off with a significant haul of $6,300 in cash and jewelry. He thought he had outsmarted the remaining cameras. In an attempt to cover his tracks, Rowe even left a business card on the screen door, creating the illusion that he had just arrived at the locked store and decided to leave his contact information. Unbeknownst to him, Mrs. McKellar reviewed the CCTV footage and uncovered the evidence when she returned. While reviewing the video, Mrs. McKellar noticed the side door opening just minutes before Rowe placed his business card at the front door. She also observed a suspicious movement of a guitar stand near the location where the stolen items were kept. Following Mr. McKellar's identification of a blue plastic container from the shop in Rowe's car, the police promptly made an arrest. Rowe was ordered to pay $6,300 in compensation for his crimes. He was also sentenced to 12 months in prison. Maybe shut all the cameras off next time, Robert. Here are a few of the dumbest way to bribe people. Number 10. The Rapper. Krayshawn Bates, known as hip-hop artist Lil Cray, tried to bribe 2 police deputies with $35,000 cash for them not to arrest him. In January 2017, Lil Cray called the police saying that he had a flat tire and was going to miss his court-ordered curfew. He was slurring his speech, so police went to his home, where they found Lil Cray drunk and gambling with 8 others while free on bond. He challenged the police officer's ability to give him a breathalyzer test, but when he finally agreed, they discovered a blood alcohol content of 0.119. Lil Cray was brought back to jail on a $10,000 bond. He was so drunk that they had to take his mugshot while he slept on a bench. Lil Cray's rap sheet was already long. He was out on bond for trying to take some out in Cleveland, and this was his 3rd arrest while out on bail. Prosecutors claim he was gang affiliated, making them extra diligent when handling his case. Some of the irony in this is that the judge allowed Lil Cray to shoot a music video in his courtroom, even though the judge was aware of the rapper's pending charges and criminal record. Judge Ryan stood by his decision, saying everyone is innocent until proven guilty, but admitted that allowing Lil Cray to film in a courtroom wasn't one of his wisest decisions. Lil Cray is open for T.I. and was asked to perform at SXSW. He's quickly making a name for himself in hip-hop, but not making the best impression on law enforcement. Number 9. La Mexicana. Liana Aguirre proved there are many ways to become internet famous after crashing into several parked cars in Guanajuato, Mexico. Still tipsy from her drunk driving spree, officers had to hold her up while walking her away from the scene of the accident. Her arrest, however, gave her 200,000 followers on social media, a new internet identity, and even a mobile game, and it cost her about $5. Liana collided with a series of parked cars while driving heavily intoxicated. Luckily, no one was injured by her actions. When the police arrived, Liana was still sitting in her car, dazed and confused by what was happening around her. As the police began questioning Liana after her initial crash, Liana tried bribing her way out of trouble. She flashed a 100 peso note to the cops. Even though 100 pesos sounds like a lot, it's only worth a little over $5. Apparently, the cops were not enticed by this hefty sum. She then tried flirting a bit with the arresting officers, but the cops still forced her to exit her vehicle. The strangeness of her arrest led to Liana becoming an internet star, getting 200,000 followers and trending on Twitter with the hashtag Lady100Pesos. Someone even made a mobile app where the objective was to avoid being arrested by throwing peso notes at oncoming cops. Maybe Liana should try more than the cost of a deli sandwich the next time she wants to bribe some officers. Number 8. The Health Inspector. Brothers John and Jack DeSanto, alongside their cousin Robert Cuba, own 3 restaurants on the same city street in Brooklyn, New York. These 3 men thought they could try to get a tip-off when their next surprise inspections would be, and hatched a scheme that required a Department of Health employee to play along. The plan was to bribe the DOH employee with $1,000 worth of entries into their Super Bowl betting pool, which could pay up to $50,000 to the winner. All the employee had to do was to give the trio a week's notice before any surprise inspection. However, the flaw in their plan was the integrity of the employee they got in contact with. He immediately reported the bribe to his superiors, and an investigation began on the trio. One of the owners kept a text conversation going with an undercover investigator, even meeting them in person twice. Between the 2 meetings, the investigator collected $16,000 in bribe money. According to Brooklyn police, surprise inspections can be grueling for restaurant owners. Failing health inspections can lead to hefty fines or even restaurant closures, but they ultimately help keep restaurants clean and safe for families to dine. All 3 restaurants, owned by the DeSantos brothers and Robert, had A health ratings with minimal violations. With the evidence collected and the investigation complete, Brooklyn police arrested the 3 owners and took them to court. They were released without bail and were due back in court in January 2022. The story fizzled out after they were caught. Perhaps they bribed the papers not to cover their court case. Number 7. The maitre d'. Restaurant owners and staff members discovered last summer that bribes can come in many different shapes and sizes, especially in Southampton, New York. As COVID restrictions began to lift, there was a surge in restaurant attendance and reservation lists were flooded. Mitch Modell, former CEO of Modell's Sporting Goods, tried to get a table at 75 Main, a high-end restaurant in Southampton. The bar was full to the brim, and wait times for a table stood at 2 hours. Mitch began to hand out tips to the hosts and servers, hoping to boost his spot on the wait list. He ended up handing out hundreds of dollars to no avail until offering to cover the bill of 2 women, landing him a spot at their table. He joined their party along with 5 of his friends, leaving a sea of angry diners in the line behind them. Reservation lists have become a battlefield as guests are giving high-end bribes to staff members to guarantee their spots or move up their reservation dates. These bribes include NASCAR tickets, helicopter rides, flights in private planes, boat trips, and concert tickets. Some guests even bring envelopes full of cash to bribe the staff. According to a regular at Le Bilbo Quay in Sag Harbor, a manager for the restaurant took a small voyage on a guest's yacht and spent the afternoon in the golf clubhouse the guests attended. Ian Duke, the owner of Southampton Social Club, was offered $3,000 from a guest who only wanted a table for the after-dinner drink service. So, if you're trying to get a reservation at any high-end New York restaurants anytime soon, be prepared to shell out your life savings worth in tips. Number 6. The Landlord. In December 2015, tenants of an apartment building in Bushwick, New York, awoke to an aggressive banging on their doors. A man was marching up and down the 4-story building, screaming that everyone had 72 hours to evacuate. If they didn't comply, the man threatened the tenants would be taken away in handcuffs. Many of the elderly residents were scared for their lives. But it turned out to be a ruse devised by the landlord and 2 inspectors from New York City's Department of Housing and Urban Development. It was all part of a bribery scandal involving dozens of city employees. Court documents revealed that landlords paid inspectors to fabricate building code violations and other complaints. Some of the payoffs were only for a few $100, which doesn't seem worth it. The city website showed more than 50 unsolved violations for the building, including leaks, lead paint hazards, cold water, bed bugs, and much more. With enough violations, the tenants could be served with an order to vacate, thus freeing up the space for new tenants. The landlord of the Bushwick building wanted his tenants out. It's unclear why, but perhaps because Bushwick is becoming a gentrified, valuable neighborhood whose buildings can be revamped and rented or sold at much higher prices. When tenants didn't pay their rent on time, he was eager to kick them out. Investigators conducted a wiretap into the landlord's phone and discovered that he paid inspectors $700 to pretend there was a vacate order. The landlord and both inspectors pleaded not guilty. Number 5. The Fan. When police in New Mexico spotted a Texas truck swerving in and out of lanes, they pulled the driver over and discovered he had been drinking and driving. The driver, Tyler Handley, openly admitted to driving drunk after coming from a sports bar where he was watching the Dallas Cowboys game. Handley was decked out in Cowboys gear and refused to take a sobriety test. While the officer checked Handley's belongings, Handley made him an offer. He asked if the officer's body camera was on and then offered him $10,000 cash if he let him go. What would have been a misdemeanor WDI then turned into a felony bribery charge. Handley was taken to the police station where his behavior shocked police. He tried to pee on the floor, break the handcuffs, and insulted officers. This was Handley's third DWI charge. We bet it coincides with how the Cowboys play on any given Sunday. Number 4. The Sharer. In another shocking police bribery case, one man tried to get out of a DUI by offering the police officer a beer. Lazaro Hernandez was pulled over at around 3 a.m. for trying to pass an officer who was directing traffic near an accident. Hernandez said he thought the traffic officer was waving him through when he passed. When he was pulled over at a traffic stop, police officers smelled alcohol on his breath and administered a field sobriety test. Hernandez defended himself, saying that he had a drink 13 hours before. He got increasingly more upset as he performed poorly in the sobriety test and eventually refused to do the walking portion. The officer placed him under arrest for a DUI. While sitting in the back of the patrol car, he tried to hand the officer a beer, and when that didn't work, $400 cash. He was trying to negotiate the impending DUI charge to super speeding. The officer refused the bribe and took Hernandez to the county jail, where he was charged with driving under the influence, bribery, open container, reckless driving, and failure to obey authorized persons directing traffic. Number 3. The Vaccine Lovers. Sometimes bribery and public health lines get blurry, especially during COVID-19. In January 2022, Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot tweeted a picture of stacks of cash spelling out the words, "Get Vaxxed," to encourage citizens to get vaccinated. Lightfoot has been serious about the COVID-19 public health crisis, but this was seen as a pathetic attempt to convince people to do something in exchange for precisely $826. She previously mandated vaccines for all Chicago city workers unless they are willing to get tested twice per week. She also issued a vaccine mandate for numerous business patrons, especially for gyms, restaurants, and entertainment venues. She threatened to shut down businesses that did not enforce the vaccine mandate for their customers. But this recent tweet was met with laughter rather than respect. But Lightfoot isn't the only one to incentivize people to get vaccinated. Many states offered jackpots and grand prizes in the millions of dollars for people who got the COVID vaccine. Private companies got on the bandwagon as well, with Krispy Kreme offering free donuts to vaccinated patrons and Uber and Lyft offering free rides to people on their way to get the shot. But for some people, it'll take a lot more than $826 to get the jab. Number 2. The Philosopher. Florida police charged Ariel Engert, a philosophy student at the University of Florida, with driving under the influence of drug charges after she was pulled over for weaving her car around Clearwater, Florida, early in the morning. Ariel failed several field sobriety tests, and the police found that her blood alcohol content was over double the legal limit for being behind the wheel. The police arrested her when they discovered a small amount of drugs in her purse, adding possession to the charge. Once at the county jail, Ariel was determined to bribe her way out of the misdemeanors. She offered Deputy Brian Sudbrink certain adult favors if he dismissed the charges and let her go. The offer gave Ariel her first bribery charge. While in county jail, the police discovered another small bag of narcotics tucked into Ariel's bra, giving her 2 more felony charges for possession and bringing illegal substances into a detention facility. She then made 2 more attempts to bribe the police to let her go, making the same offer to Munoz and Biddle's deputies. 2 bribery charges later, Ariel was freed from custody after posting a $5,000 bond. In the end, Ariel racked up a DUI charge, marijuana possession, narcotics transport into the county jail, and 3 different bribery charges to add to her criminal record. This wasn't her first charge for drunk driving and possession, according to police records, so it's probably safe to say it won't be her last time being charged either. Number 1. The restaurateur. Apparently, Ann Pizitz missed all those roadside billboards warning about the dangers of drinking and driving. Police caught up with Ann on August 3, 2019, but what should have been a misdemeanor turned into a felony and a much higher penalty to pay. Starting as a food truck and growing to a franchise, Ann co-founded Melt, a grilled cheese restaurant with several locations in Alabama. A concerned citizen called the police complaining about a reckless driver. When the police arrived to investigate, they found Ann in her black Mercedes driving rather erratically. They pulled her over to find her texting and reeking of alcohol. She failed several field sobriety tests and refused to take a breathalyzer. Now, this would be a pretty run-of-the-mill DUI charge. However, once Ann arrived at the Madison County Jail, she made one last attempt to get out of trouble. She offered one of the officers $1,000 to forget this happened and let her walk, even threatening the stability of the officer's position as a public servant. The grilled cheese queen of Alabama thought she had some pull in local government. The bribe upped the ante, although she was heavily intoxicated when she made the offer. Unfortunately for Ann, the officer she bribed had his body cam rolling, capturing the whole thing on camera. According to jail records, the attempted bribe raised her bail to $6,000. Unable to pay up, she spent the night in jail. Moral of the story? When billboards tell you not to drink and drive, listen. Click to watch one of these next videos. Let us know in the comments section what you would do if you found $10 million in cash buried in the ground.